It is in the middle of the night. I really appreciate you taking time to call. If you're just joining us, again, please type in where you're calling in from. And then the next thing I would ask you to type in is what's your target test date, and be specific. Don't say October, say October 15th. It helps me to know when people plan to test. We can see August and November, September, August. Celeste from Japan, welcome. And then other people, if you could type in your target test date. Again, the end of September, October, early to mid-October. So Diana, do you plan to test before or after the exam changes? You say December. Okay, so Celeste, after December. Okay. So from Diana, you need to do it before. Okay, great. So this session is geared for people who are testing on the current exam. And then at the end of today, we'll talk about the exam changes starting December 16th. So at the end of our session today, we'll talk about how the exam is changing. Today's focus is on cost management. So the information today is based on Chapter 7 of the PMBOK guide, but I don't want to imply that everything is a direct quote out of the PMBOK guide. Some of my questions absolutely will be interpretation questions. So here we have the processes related to cost management. Let's start with plan cost management at the top. Can anyone tell me the primary output of plan cost management? Great, the primary output is the cost management plan. Let's move on to estimate costs. And my question is, what's the primary output of estimate costs? Okay, so the cost estimates would be the primary output. Another important output would be the basis of estimates. Great, let's move on to determine budget. I would say there's two important outputs of determined budget. The cost baseline, great, and the project funding requirements. And then if we go to control costs, what would you say are some of the outputs of control costs? Okay, so cost forecasts, work performance information change requests. So that's great. And then if we think about project management plan updates, can you tell me what is being updated? So with project performance updates, what's being updated? Great. So with project management plan updates, can you tell me what are the 3 elements that are most likely being updated? It would be the cost management plan, it would be the cost baseline, and it would be the performance measurement baseline. Again, when we think about project management updates here, it's the cost baseline, the cost management plan, and the performance measurement baseline. So here we're going to see some questions. The output of the process plan cost management is the... So the output of plan cost management is not the cost estimates. Data analysis would be a tool and technique. It's not project funding requirements. It's the cost management plan. This should be a really, really easy question for you. If this is not a really easy question, you're not ready for the exam. So here we have an example of items that might be in the cost management plan. Maybe it talks about level of accuracy of the estimates. Maybe it talks about rules of measurement for earned value. Your project is running 4 weeks behind schedule. It is suggested that you take corrective action to bring the project back on schedule. No additional resources are available. Most likely you will. So go ahead, type your answer into the chat. It says we're running behind schedule. We're going to take corrective action. There's no additional resources available. So answer A is crash the project. So you tell me, why is answer A wrong? Meaning, why won't we crash the project? Great, we can't crash the project because it takes additional resources to do it. So that's great. Why is answer B wrong? Resource level the project. So again, why is B wrong? Resource level the project. So resource leveling doesn't help us bring a project back on schedule. Resource leveling helps us ensure that we have no overcommitted resources. The same is true for answer D, resource smoothing. Resource smoothing doesn't help us bring the project back on schedule. Resource smoothing ensures that we have no overcommitted resources. So the answer we're looking for here is fast track the project. So from Wesley, good added comments. Fast tracking usually increases the risk of the project. Crashing is going to cost additional money. Work performance data is an important input of control costs. Where does the data come from? So we're asking, where does work performance data come from? Or a different way to ask it, work performance data is an output of what process? So work performance data is an output of direct and managed project work. That's the only place where we have work performance data as an output. Control processes usually have work performance data as an input. If you're struggling with this idea, go into my online materials and you'll see in many videos I show a flow chart of data versus information versus reports. Your practical experience tells you that we are never exactly on target as it relates to costs. What should we set up on the project to tell us how much variation is allowed before we must escalate the issue? So answer A is rules of performance measurement. Rules of performance measurement relate to earned value. We've already talked about units of measure and levels of accuracy. The answer we're looking for here is control thresholds. So control thresholds should be listed in the cost management plan. Your project is early in the initiation phase. What is the most likely cost estimate that will be developed? So we're early in the initiation phase. Answer A is definitive estimate. That estimate would come later when we have more information. Activity duration estimate, project duration estimate, they are not cost estimates. So the answer we're looking for here is rough order of magnitude. So again, I'm going to assume my explanations are making sense unless you ask questions in the chat area. Your manager has asked the project management team to provide a definitive estimate. A definitive estimate has a range of So a definitive estimate is an estimate we would develop when we have more information. It will have a tighter range than a rough order of magnitude. A, minus 25 to plus 75%. That's the range of a ROM. B makes no sense. Your underrun number would never be greater than your overrun number. C is the definitive estimate, minus 5 to plus 10%. D makes no sense again. You'd never have an underrun number bigger than an overrun number. We're determining the cost estimates for the control accounts. You do this by adding together the cost estimates for the associated work packages. This is an example of Mhm. Mhm. So I look at these four choices. We're talking about adding up cost estimates. None of these choices are perfect, meaning I wish the answer here was there. I wish they had the answer bottom up estimating, but that's not here. And so this, I think, is more representative of the exam, which is the best answer from the answers listed. It's not reserve, it's not history, it's not expert, it's cost aggregation. Cost aggregation means to aggregate or add numbers together. Again, is D the perfect answer? No, but it's the best answer from this list. The perfect answer would have been bottom-up estimating. For the first time, your project is being funded externally. What tool and technique of determined budget relates to acquiring funding for your project? So this group did great. Sometimes people wrongly select answer A. So it's being funded externally. We're looking for a tool and technique related to acquiring funding for the project. Answer A is a wrong answer, funding limit reconciliation, but I think that's the trickier answer. Funding limit reconciliation is a tool we use to make sure that what we plan to spend reconciles with how much funding we have. This is not about history. This is not data analysis. I think everyone who answered got it right. The answer is financing. Some of us don't need to worry about financing on our projects. For others, this is a big part of managing our project, is acquiring the funding. Your team wants to begin the process to determine budget. Before you can do this, what process should have completed? So we want to begin determine budget. What should have already completed? A, validate scope is a monitoring and controlling process. That would come later. Define scope looks like a good answer. Okay. Manage team is an executing process that would come after planning. Control scope, we can't control scope until we've done more work in planning. The answer we want is define scope. Realize with these questions, when they ask what should have already been completed, when they ask what should have already completed, it might not be the previous process. It might be several processes back. Your team has used analogous estimating to estimate costs. There's now a cost estimate and a basis of estimate for the project. What are you likely to do next? So you can see that we're getting different answers from different people. So we've just estimated costs. We have a cost estimate, we have a basis of estimate. What are you likely to do next? So tell me, what process have we just completed? Okay, so great, we just finished estimate costs. Let's look at answer A, determine rules for performance measurement. So determine rules for performance measurement. When does answer A occur? In what process does answer A occur? So in what process does answer A occur? So determine rules for performance measurement occurs in plan cost management. So would you agree A should have already occurred? Let's go to B, use funding limits reconciliation. In what process does answer B occur? So not what process group. Not control costs. B occurs in determine budget. So would you agree B occurs after the question? So B is probably the right answer. Let's go to C, complete parametric estimating for cost estimates. When does answer C occur? In what process? C occurs in estimate costs. So would you agree C should have already happened because we've just finished estimate costs? Let's go to D, use the critical path method. In what process do we use the critical path method? Great, develop schedule. In general, do we develop schedule before or after we estimate costs? In general, we develop the schedule before we estimate costs. So what's the only answer here that relates to what we do after we estimate costs? It's answer B. So I gave you a longer time to think about this because most of you got the question wrong. Okay. Any comments on this one before we move on? So I think this question is very representative of the exam. Your team has determined units of measure, levels of precision, levels of accuracy, etc., as it relates to cost. What are you likely to do next? Okay, and so you can see less people are answering the question. When you look at the question, what process have we just completed in the question? So we've just completed plan cost management. Does everyone agree with that? When you look at A, cost aggregation, What's the process we most likely associate with cost aggregation? So A relates to determine budget. What about B, funding limit reconciliation? What process is that? Again, that's determine budget. Parametric estimating for cost estimates. What process would you relate that to? Estimate cost. D is the critical path method. What process is answer D? Okay, develop schedule. Do any of these processes occur before plan cost management? Or which of these four answers occurs before plan cost management? Would everyone agree develop schedule occurs before plan cost management? So answer D is wrong. A, B, and C all occur after plan cost management, but which one occurs first? So did my logic? Okay. So estimate cost occurs before determine budget. And that's why I'm going with answer C. So again, I'm going to wait a minute to see if there's any questions on this one. I think this question is very representative of the exam. Okay. So we're just going to switch gears for a minute. Some of you on this call are using my online materials. So this video that you're seeing is coming out of my online materials. Okay. So if you don't require 35 hours, I have what's called PMP self-study, okay, or I call it PMP exam self-study. I'll fix this slide. And it's to help people pass the exam who don't require the 35 hours. If you do require the 35 hours, I have a true online course. So some of you are coming to my calls every week. So you're seeing one video a week. Okay. I'll tell you online, I have over 200 videos. If you think you're going to pass the exam seeing one video a week, it's not going to happen. Okay. So any comments from anyone using my online materials? And then we'll move back to my sample questions. Okay, so we'll move on to some sample questions again. For those of you that are coming to me for help once a week, I'm just going to be honest, this is not enough to help you pass the exam. Your project will have team members and vendors working in 7 different countries. To develop a cost estimate, you need to understand the influence changing currency rates may have on the project. This information can be found in what input of estimate costs. So first I'm going to eliminate answer C. Any comments on why answer C must be wrong? right? Because we don't have a cost baseline yet, so it can't be an input of estimate costs. The answer that we're looking for here would be the cost management plan. So our cost management plan should say very specifically how on this project we're going to deal with changing currency rates. When I look at answer B, organizational process assets, answer B is an okay answer, but it's generic. Answer A is much better because it's more specific. We should have already taken what's in the organizational process assets and applied it to this project in the cost management plan. Your team wants to begin the process estimate costs. Before you can do this, what process should have been completed? So this is one of those what should you have done before questions. People a lot quicker answering this one. Validate scope would come after estimate costs. Manage team would come after. Control scope would come after. Create WBS is the only process here that would come before estimate costs. A different comment I'm going to make is you really need to study page 25. You need to really understand page 25. Those of you using my online materials, early in my materials, I have a video called The Process Game that really helps us understand the process, the page 25. You and your project management team have just developed the cost estimates for your project. What are you likely to do next? So we've developed the cost estimates, what it's likely to do next. When I look at answer A, does A occur before or after estimate costs? So A occurs after. What about B, create WBS? Does that occur before or after? That occurs before. What about develop schedule? That occurs before. What about identify stakeholders? That occurs before. So would you agree the only answer that occurs after estimate costs is direct and managed project work? Again, how would you know this answer? It's by studying page 25 of the PMBOK guide. In my video called Process Game, I tell you to make, just use index cards to really understand the sequence of these processes. Which of the following is an input of the process determined budget? So we're looking for an input of determined budget. How do you know answer A, cost baseline, is wrong? Because it's the output of determined budget. So many of you said cost estimates. So let's skip that one. Let's go to answer C. How do you know answer C is wrong? Answer C is project funding requirements. because it's an output of determined budget. Great. How do you know answer D, reserve analysis, is wrong? Because reserve analysis is a tool and technique. So several of you have used this phrase. You see, I get questions right often by the process of elimination. Plus, I know I need my cost estimates if I'm going to determine my budget. You are early in the process of estimating costs and have a limited amount of information available. What estimating technique are you most likely to use? So the key phrase in the question is limited amount of information. For parametric estimating, we need a lot of information to build an algorithm. So A is wrong. B, bottom-up estimating, we need a lot of detailed information. The right answer is analogous, meaning we need information on one past activity or maybe one past project. 3-point estimating is wrong because we need 3 points for every estimate. It's really important for the exam to understand the difference between parametric and analogous. You have been asked to estimate the cost of a new factory. You have a lot of historical data from other factories and are being asked to estimate based on square footage. It's important that the estimate be accurate. You are most likely to use So there's many hints in the question. We have a lot of data. We're being asked to estimate based on square footage, meaning we're going to use an algorithm. The estimate must be accurate. All of this is leading us to parametric. With analogous, the estimate might not be accurate. Cost of quality would not help us estimate the cost of a factory, only the cost of quality associated with it. Expert judgment is too vague. For the first time, you're being allowed a management reserve on your project. Management reserve is for So here, the question is about management reserve. When I look at the 4 choices, I see the word unforeseen, known, unforeseen, and known. So is management for unforeseen work or for known work? Okay, so is management reserve for So just a reminder for the exam, you really need to understand analogous versus parametric. Analogous often focuses on one past project or one past activity. Parametric, we're using an algorithm. On your product development project, you forecast that you are going to have a large amount of rework. To address this, you are most likely to set up a So if we're forecasting that we're going to have rework, is this a known unknown or an unknown unknown? So this is a known KU, a known unknown. When you look at A, management reserve, is that for known unknowns or unknown unknowns? Management reserve is for unknown unknowns. The answer we want here is contingency reserve. Exploits and share are for what kinds of risks? Are they for threats or are they for opportunities? C and D. So Brad, great comment, positives. So exploit and share are for positive risks, or we might call it opportunities. Rework is usually not considered an opportunity. So for the exam, it's important to know contingency reserve is for known unknowns, management reserve for unknown unknowns, and then important with management reserve, it's for unforeseen work inside the scope. Management reserve is not in the project baseline, but included in the overall project budget. So if you're struggling with these idea of reserves, go specifically to my videos related to determine budget, and I really explain these reserves. Your organization has just won a major contract with the economic business office of your community. You want to ensure that you are going to spend the community's money wisely. To keep the total cost of quality down, we are likely to invest a larger percentage of our spending on It looks like people are doing well on the question. We're trying to keep the total cost of quality down. So we're going to invest a larger percentage on prevention costs. So A, prevention cost is a proactive answer. If we spend more money proactively on quality, we're likely to spend less money in total. B, C, and D are all reactive answers. So this question is coming out of the plan quality area of the PMBOK guide, where we talk about the cost of quality. Though this question is not a direct quote. So if you read that area trying to find this exact idea, it's not there. So to review this idea a little bit, the cost of conformance, this is money we're spending proactively to ensure quality. It could be prevention costs or appraisal costs. The cost of nonconformance is money we're spending reactively. I'm used to it being called failure costs. Some organizations split it up into internal and external failure costs. We want to spend our money proactively, and then we'll spend less money in total. It's important as part of control schedule to determine if project performance is improving or deteriorating over time. Most likely we will do this through what technique? We're trying to see if performance is getting better or worse. Answer B is variance analysis. That's not the answer we want. Variance is how are we varying from the plan. Inspection certainly is not the answer we want. So now I'm left with earned value management and trend analysis. Either answer could be correct. Either answer could be true. I would go with trend analysis. And you might ask why? Okay, because trend analysis is more specific. If you ask what's the definition of trend analysis, it's looking at history to predict the future. So earned value management does lots of things, including trend analysis. Again, when you get questions like this, I would go with the more specific answer, trend analysis. It's important as part of control schedule to determine the cause and degree of difference between the baseline and actual performance. Most likely we will do this through what technique? For me, it's the same kind of question. Oops. So earned value analysis could be true, but variance analysis is more specific. The definition of variance analysis is looking to determine the degree of difference between actual and baseline and also the cause. Well, I would select answer B. I'm not saying answer A is wrong, earned value management. I'm saying answer B is better, variance analysis, because it's more specific. So again, you're going to get questions on the exam, maybe not in this area, where they give a general answer and a specific answer. The more specific answer is usually the better answer. Okay. So we've already talked about this, so I'm going to skip over it and start wrapping up for today. Okay. And so first, let's talk about next week, and then I'll talk about how the exam is changing, just for those people who might be interested. So next